Hey, what's up guys? It's Clint Coons here, and in this video, we're going to talk about 5 common mistakes when setting up a real estate joint venture. Okay, let's get started. Now I got to tell you that, I've been doing this for, so long, and now my hair's turning gray. But here's a recurring theme that I've seen in 23 years of practice, is that when real estate investors get together to put together deals, many times these end in divorce because there are violated expectations. And that is why I wanted to put together my 5 typical concerns that I have whenever I hear a client coming to me and they say they want to start a joint venture for a real estate project with another investor. And I think these are key if you want to go out there and you want to work with someone else to expand your investing through real estate. You got to make sure that you're following these procedures so you don't end up in a situation where you're going to lose all your investments or you're going to be bogged down in court cases, which means you're going to lose all your investments, because we know attorneys love to get paid. All right, so what is the first mistake that I see people make when it comes to setting up a joint venture? That is vetting, okay, their JV partner. This is critical, all right? Know who you're getting in bed with. You've heard that story before, right? Know who you're going to be working with. Now, I understand that you can't always determine or have a working relationship or knowledge of someone else, but here's the thing. There are a lot of services out there that you can use to perform background checks on an individual. And you should do some due diligence, all right? Trust but verify. Use FBI mode, as I've heard people refer to this before. Go out there and look into that individual. Ask them, say somebody came to me and they said, hey, Clint, I want to do a joint venture with you. I have the expertise. I want you to put up the money and we're going to make tons of cash on the sale of this investment. Well, the first thing I'm going to have to ask myself is, what is my prior relationship like? What do I know about them? So I want to know, hey, give me some referrals, all right? I want to know who you've worked with in the past. Ask them, how many people have you worked with before and you've done this deal with? If they say, oh, I've done 9, okay, give me 6. So now they've already set the number. So if they can't give you 6 out of the 9, there's a first red flag that you're going to have. Ask them if they'd be willing to consent to a background check. Say, hey, listen, I want to work with you, but I got to do my due diligence. So I want to do a background check on you. Maybe even run a credit report would be, get them to consent to that so you can see whether or not they have a lot of outstanding obligations. Because I tell you what, if there's a lot of debt involved on that person, whoa, your deal's going to go south before it even gets started. Or maybe they're going to take your money and pay off those other individuals that they may owe money to. So digging into their background is really important, especially if they're asking for you to put up money. Now, if you're working with someone who's not asking you to put up money, some of the things aren't as a concern, but still you want to have some semblance of who it is. Because let's say you have a person that's involved in some lawsuits. Those lawsuits, if a judgment's entered against them, because I'm not asking them to put up the whole deal, maybe we're coming in 50-50, they could impact your investing. So vetting your partner, I think, is critical before you enter into a joint venture agreement. Okay, so what is the second thing we want to look at when we're putting together a JV? The second thing is talk about responsibilities, okay? I want to know what each party is going to be responsible for, or maybe you have one party that's not going to be responsible for anything. But that has to be clearly defined. Go into this and say, all right, you're going to do X, I'm going to do Y, or maybe you're not doing anything and I'm doing it all, but list all that out. Because later on, what typically happens in these types of agreements is that people have a conversation and they get all excited about it and they say, hey, I'm going to do this and you're going to do that, and this is all going to turn out great. But then as we start progressing, one party, they lose interest in the project, and then they don't perform and they don't fulfill their end of their responsibilities, and that falls back on to you. So that could be a situation that comes up, and then what do? Well, that's why you have to have number 3, okay? Failure to perform, okay? So you have to have some language in your joint venture agreement that addresses what happens if number 2 gets violated. We have violated expectations. My partner's not doing what they're supposed to do, and now I have to step in to my partner's shoes and wear his pants and do all of that in addition to my own. Well, maybe you're okay doing it, but here's the thing. You need to receive compensation. So in order to make it fair, to incentivize someone to do that, we need to put in there some incentives for you to make sure that if the person who's responsible for doing A doesn't do it, that at the end of the game, you're going to be compensated a little extra for your additional responsibilities that you have to take on. So this is what we'll typically put into a joint venture agreement for our clients. We'll go through that and say, all right, so if they don't do X, then here are the ramifications for that. Maybe they don't get their full interest, or we're going to allocate a higher percentage of the profits over to the party that does this, because we've outlined out that the responsibilities 1 through 6 are weighted as follows: 10, 15, 20, 6% of the deal. And so as long as you do them check, you now are entitled to that percentage of the profits. But if you don't, and someone else does it, then they're going to receive that share. So putting in failure to perform, I think, is really important. Now, the other thing that you're going to want to talk about is how conflicts are going to be handled. All right, so let's talk about conflicts. What do I mean by that with conflicts? Well, what happens when you can't agree on something? How are you going to determine the path forward? If there are two people, this can be really problematic when you have a joint venture agreement, because you don't have a third party that you could say, hey, if 2/3 of the members agree, then we're going to go forwards with the overall project based upon what they agree upon. When it's just two individuals, that can be an issue. And many times what I see in JV operating agreements is that it's unanimous consent, that everyone has to agree. Well, that can then lead to these other problems that are up here, that people then don't perform because they're no longer have an interest in the project because they feel like it's going in a different direction. And so maybe in that scenario, what you should build into your agreement is that you have a third party, an arbitrator, maybe someone else that you both agree on who is a real estate investor who understands projects, that you would go to and you'd say, listen, here's what we do. I want to do this. They want to do this. What do you think? And then you agree that whatever that party states will be binding upon the overall joint venture, and each partner agrees to abide by it. So you can choose somebody to serve in that capacity, namely someone who has experience, of course. I've read joint venture agreements before in the past where they're real estate joint ventures and they say we're going to submit it to arbitration. Listen, so you're going to go and submit it to a judge or an ex-judge or an attorney who's serving as an arbiter, and they have zero real estate experience. And so now you have to educate them. What does that mean? Lots of money. The person who is the best orator is going to probably win the day. It'd be better if you just chose someone that you know that has real estate experience, that's doing what you're doing, that can easily step in, make a determination, and keep that project moving forwards. So I think conflicts is really important, should be specified in there. Number 5, okay, who's going to run day to day ops? All right, so with any type of real estate joint venture that you're getting involved with, all right, there are things that are going on a daily basis. Who's going to be going out, meeting with the contractors on the site, answering, questions about, hey, are we going to use this type of trim here? What type of doors you want? You want louver doors stuck over here in this closet? How are we going to trim out the closet itself? It's just going to be a shelf with a bar. We're going to do a full package with drawers. Those types of things that come up on any job site. Where are we going to mount the hood for the range? Are we going to do an offset? Who's going to do that? All right. So if you're involved in a real estate joint venture, you needed to find out that day-to-day operations are going to be handled by one individual, okay? Because the last thing you want is a scenario where you've got contractors that have to reach out to two people. All right, they're gonna lose interest in your project, number one, because if you're not on the same page and they're getting conflicting information, they're not going to want to do anything, and then they're going to quit responding, quit showing up at the job site. So you got to have someone that's willing to take on the hat and carry the mantle, and the other person has to agree to step out into the background and say, all right, I trust your judgment, and I'm going to let you handle the day-to-day. A lot of times what you can do here, though, is when you're putting together the day-to-day operations, you should put a financial threshold in there. That any individual, if I gave it over to partner A, you're handling the day-to-day, but you cannot commit the joint venture to more than $2,000 without the approval of unanimous, 2/3, 3/5, depends how many partners are involved in your JV, in order to move beyond that financial threshold. So they can't encumber or bind that partnership, that LLC, to a contract to say, come in, and they decide, well, you know what, I just want to rip out this entire kitchen, do a full remodel on it, rather than just doing the cabinet door fronts like we originally planned. So that would stop that from happening, going from a $1,500 change fee to a $15,000 change fee for that JV. All right, so the last one that I think is really important that many people overlook is your exit strategy. Okay. So what is it about the exit strategy that is so crucial? It comes down to figuring out what we want to do with this property that we're getting involved with. So if you're putting a deal together to flip, and what is that price going to be when you go to market? You should figure that out ahead of time. Hey, if we've done our comps and we know what this property's worth, we agree that when we go to market, we're going to list it at this amount. I've seen real estate investors before that are in JV agreements and they have one partner that has no concept about the market that they're investing in. And they have this presumption that everything's like California where it's really overinflated. And so they want to list the property at $800,000. You're like, dude, it's not going to sell at $800K. This is a $675 going to market at, not the $800,000. They think you're leaving money on the table. So you should specify that at the outset, what those parameters are going to be, what happens if it doesn't sell, when we do a drop, how much we're going to do a drop on that price, assuming that was a scenario. And if it's on market for 90 days and it isn't selling, you've done the 2 or 3 drops that you agreed to, then it becomes a rental property and you're going to rent it out. Is it going to be Airbnb? Is it going to be traditional rental? How is that going to be determined? You need to go through all this stuff, okay? So that you know when you exit out of that JV that those expectations or you've met the expectations of the parties going into it at the outset. And I mean, I've just touched on a few points for each of these that you should be considering, and there's many more. And that's why I tell people, you know, when it comes to setting up a joint venture with another party, it's really an area where you need to sit down with a qualified individual, someone like Anderson, where you can work with one of our attorneys that do this stuff and they can walk you through the various scenarios and the provisions that you need to have in there to make sure that your interests are being protected. Guys, if you liked this video, make sure you hit the like button. And if you want to learn more, we've got great links in our show notes to bring you to other services that Anderson has to offer. If you want to see me live teaching my tax and asset protection event, be sure to check out that link as well, where you can register for that course. I teach them every 2 to 3 weeks or so. It's on a Saturday. Myself, my partner Toby Mathis, we go through different tax and asset protection strategies for real estate investors. You'll learn a phenomenal amount of content in a very short period of time. Some people have often described it as trying to drink from a fire hose. Well, you be the judge and sign up for it. Hope to see you there.